Right, your reporting continues now here on the Newsfeed Late Night. The Judicial Services Commission has recommended the appointment of 3 women and 2 men to the Supreme Court of Appeal. The successful candidates are Judges Zeenat Carelse, Wendy Hughes, and Nolwazi Mabindla-Boqwana, Trevor, Gorven, and Selewe, Mothle. Joining me now to discuss this is, of course, Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matters Campaign, Begezeli Benjamin. Begezeli, good evening and thank you very much for your time. If you look at what the JSC has been doing, one would say it's a concerted effort to try and transform the judiciary, making it more equitable in terms of gender and in terms of race. 2010, the appointment of women to the judiciary was sitting at 24%. 2017, that total jumped to about 37%. There were 89 female judges. I don't know where the situation is sitting now. Are they moving in the right direction, and are they moving fast enough?
Good evening, Trevor, and good evening to the newsroom viewers. The Judicial Service Commission is moving in the right direction in terms of gender representativity in the judiciary. As you correctly state, the numbers a decade ago looked very bad in terms of the number of women on the bench, and over time, those numbers have gradually gone up. Where there has been a sort of less movement has been in the leadership echelons, where we see that women judges are very few. You'll find Judge Mandisa Maya, who's the president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. She's the most senior woman judge. There is Judge Monica Leo, the judge president of the Northwest High Court. She has been that woman for a very long time. And just a few minutes ago, actually, they were announcing only just a second woman to be appointed as judge president of the Limpopo High Court. So there are strides that have been made, but they are not moving fast enough.
Yeah. The effectiveness of women judges there sitting on the bench, in fact, Zeenat Carelse giving her account of, for example, Justice Mandisa Maya and how she has pushed back against, for example, what we have heard during these interviews is the top 6 bullying judges. I mean, that speaks to their effectiveness on the bench.
Yes, Judge Mandisa Maya has been very effective in the role as president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court of Appeal is a unique court in many ways, in that it is the second highest court in terms of the hierarchy, and it hears the appeals across all the different high courts. It's known as a very tough court in terms of volume of work and the speed at which the work is produced. On average, the Supreme Court of Appeal produces about 2 to 3 times as many judgments as the Constitutional Court, for example. So it's a tough court, and so she's maintained those standards, while at the same time transforming the number of judges and the diversity of the judges on that particular court. Just this round, there were about 4 women judges who ran as candidates to be appointed in that court, and all of them had acting experience on the court, which is something that needs a leader to be deliberate in trying to get diversity and representativity reflected in the courts in which they sit.
Reflect for me on what you think is the ceiling, the stumbling block from, for example, breaking this long history of women being marginalized in our judiciary.
So it sort of goes a little bit broader than just the judiciary, because the judiciary is fed by the legal profession. So we need to see more women attorneys, more women judges who excel in the legal profession. Women attorneys and women advocates before we see women judges. And so the legal profession has been very resistant to women. The way that the profession has operated for a very long time has been hostile towards women. So if you have a child, for example, as an advocate, you almost will go out of business because your practice is crippled. So those systemic challenges have prevented women from thriving in the profession. And so the pool from which women judges can be drawn was really, really shallow. We still see, we're seeing changes happening, but they're very slow in the legal profession, and which is why we're not seeing faster change in the judiciary itself.
Indeed, I mean, you would certainly say it is quite at a slow pace. I mean, the fact that even now, during the interviews, questions around transformation on the bench are still being asked tells you that the JSC is still pretty much concerned about that. But at what point do we just go beyond the numbers? At what point will we say we have now achieved that transformation?
Okay. So the Constitution requires that when the Judicial Service Commission is appointing judges, they look at the racial and gender composition of the country, but the Constitution also requires a more substantive kind of transformation. So it requires a sort of looking at the kind of transformed society that the Constitution envisages, which is built on freedom, on equality, and on human rights. So there are movements towards trying to ask those qualitative questions that don't only look at the raw numbers, but the quality of the candidate, the kind of experience that they bring, the kind of background which will shape the law. So, for example, Judge Carelse that you spoke about, she has a background of being a prosecutor, and then she became a judge, and she succeeded in the land claims court. And so her experience and her background makes her valuable to the Supreme Court of Appeal, because she will add diversity not only in terms of her race and gender, but also in the views that she might have on the law, and in the way that she views certain issues that affect the development of the law.
Looking at the recommendations then being made, 3 women and 2 men to the Supreme Court of Appeals, that prospect that yourself, Judges Matter, have been talking of a woman Chief Justice, is that matter, would you say, being taken seriously?
I think it is being taken seriously by the public. So since, for example, we've started speaking about it, a lot of people have approached us and said, look, I hadn't been thinking about the issue, but you've got me thinking about the issue, and the conversation is starting, which is where we want things to be. People should be speaking about it more, and we should be having open debates. And that process will actually lead to a more qualitative person who comes out, where we can interrogate their ability, their experience, the way that they've conducted themselves as a judge, and whether or not they are suitable to be Chief Justice. So we are very happy at where the discussion is going, but we now look to the JSC to sort of start that process.
Mabindla, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight. That was the Research and Advocacy Officer at the Judges Matter campaign, Mabindla Benjamin, here on the Newsfeed Late Night with us. All right.